My school bus driver locked the doors and took me somewhere I'd never been. Then I saw my little brother waiting inside a stranger's SUV. The first sign that something was wrong was the coffee cup sitting on the dashboard of my school bus. Our driver, Mr. Hanley, never drank coffee while driving, and he definitely never took the old industrial road behind the airport. That morning, though, he turned onto it without saying a word, and when I asked where we were going, he locked the bus doors. I was 17, and until that moment, I had always thought being scared meant hearing something terrible happen. I learned that day it could also mean hearing absolutely nothing. Every kid had gotten off at the usual stops until I was the only passenger left. I stood near the front and asked, "Why are we going this way?" Mr. Hanley glanced at me in the mirror. "Your father changed your pickup arrangements." My stomach tightened. Dad had never called the school without telling me first. I pulled out my phone, but before I could unlock it, Hanley said, "Your battery won't help you where we're headed." I stared at him. "How do you know my phone is almost dead?" He smiled. "Because your father mentioned it." That answer made no sense. Dad barely remembered what kind of phone I had. Then Hanley turned onto a narrow service road, surrounded by warehouses and chain link fences. I called Dad anyway. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. Hanley suddenly said, "You know, your father must be exhausted after working nights at the hospital." I froze. Dad had started that job 6 months earlier, and he hated anyone knowing his schedule. "What did you just say?" I asked. Hanley ignored me. "He leaves at 6 in the morning, sleeps until noon, then picks up your little brother from the after-school program." My hands went cold. Nobody outside our family knew my brother Ethan's schedule. "Stop the bus," I said. "Right now." He laughed softly. "We're almost there." I moved toward the emergency exit, but he slammed his palm against the steering wheel. "Sit down." His voice had changed completely. No friendliness. No patience. Just warning. I backed away and noticed something through the rear window. A black SUV following us. I thought someone might help, so I waved frantically. Instead of slowing down, the SUV pulled closer. Then its headlights flashed twice. Hanley looked in the mirror and smiled. "That's our escort." I realized this wasn't some random kidnapping. Someone had planned every part of it. The bus stopped beside an abandoned aircraft hangar. Hanley opened his door, but before he could reach me, I grabbed the metal fire extinguisher mounted beside the seats. "Don't come near me." He raised both hands. "Nobody wants to hurt you." "Then let me go." A woman stepped out of the SUV. I recognized her immediately. It was my Aunt Claire, my father's older sister, who hadn't spoken to us in almost 3 years. Behind her stood a man I didn't know. Claire looked at me through the windshield and started crying. "You have no idea what your father did," she whispered. I shouted that she was insane, but she opened the SUV's back door. Ethan was sitting inside, clutching his dinosaur backpack. His face was wet with tears. "Ethan!" I screamed. He reached toward me, but the stranger pulled the door shut. Claire told me Dad had stolen money from their family's construction company and framed her for it. She claimed she had proof and said she only wanted to take us somewhere safe until the truth came out. But then she said something that made my blood run colder. "Your father knows we're here. He sent us." I knew instantly she was lying. Dad would never send someone to take us without telling me. I looked at Hanley, then at the hangar, then at Ethan. Something clicked. The stranger wasn't guarding us. He was guarding Claire. I lifted the extinguisher and smashed the emergency window beside me. Glass exploded across the floor. I climbed through before Hanley could grab me and ran toward the highway, screaming for help. A delivery truck stopped. The driver jumped out and called 911. Within minutes, police surrounded the hangar. Claire tried to flee, but officers caught her beside the SUV. Later, detectives discovered she had forged documents, hired Hanley, and staged the entire kidnapping to pressure Dad into surrendering control of the company. She had never been trying to save us. She had been using us as leverage. Ethan and I were taken home that night. Dad hugged us so tightly neither of us complained. As the ambulance lights faded outside our house, Ethan whispered, "Are we going to school tomorrow?" I looked at him and smiled through my tears. "Yeah, buddy," he nodded. "Good. I don't ever want to ride that bus again." Neither did I.